Too many channels throw around the term underrated gem only to go on to talk about stuff like Stray or Vampire Survivors. And granted, those are some pretty great games, but they're not really hidden or underrated at all. So in this video, my goal is to point out some literally underrated games. Each of these games have less than 500 reviews on Steam. That's because when you get over 500 reviews, Steam typically starts to promote your game a lot more, so you're a lot more likely to know about it. But that's only half the system, because each of these also has at least an 85% rating on Steam. Most of the games on this list though have a way higher rating than that, but that's just to say that it's not just me that thinks these games are great. And thanks to the support of my patrons, I actually have a small budget to go out and buy some games and find some new stuff that I typically wouldn't have played beforehand, so I'm really thankful. And keep in mind, if a game doesn't grab you, just stick around because there is a ton of variety here. So get your wishlist ready because I'm going to show you some pretty neat stuff here. Alright, I'm not bearing the lead. Tall Trails is one of my favorite games of 2025 and one of the best games I've ever covered. It completely blindsided me with its simple design and just how much fun it is. I loved it so much that I finished it twice in a single sitting. Sure, each playthrough might only be 3 hours long, but I immediately had to jump right back into it on New Game Plus. Imagine taking the no-pressure free roam of a short hike and mixing it with the stamina-based climbing of Breath of the Wild. It's a chill, combat-free world where you play as a little golem on a quest to find a purpose. And to do so, your goal is to collect clay from all around the environment, similar in a way to the stars from Mario 64. But your ultimate goal is meeting with this sorcerer who hopefully holds your answer to your purpose. The real gameplay hook though is that you can stuff everything you find into a back-mounted launcher for different effects. Sure, most of the stuff will just propel you up into the air, but some have a much more unique result that encourages experimentation. The entire game is designed to be a series of quirky lo-fi playgrounds, each on their own separate islands with new items and hurdles to overcome. Also, there's no fall damage, which is a game changer. It gets rid of any fear, so instead of carefully making your way up mountains, you feel free to play fast and loose. There's also a whole perk system that you can tweak, which can drastically change things up. It just wants you to try ridiculous stuff. It's a relaxed design sensibility that makes such a special game for exploring and experimenting with. But as a solo developed game, don't expect it to be perfectly polished. Much of the presentation is going for this kitschy, rough type look. And for some, that might be a deal breaker, but I found it pretty charming. It's clear that every single ounce of energy was focused on one thing, and that's making the moment-to-moment gameplay and movement feel fantastic. And I think that's a trade-off that is 100% the right call. It's a game that feels handmade, and in an industry where everyone's trying to put out the most ambitious, polished type of games, it's really refreshing to see a game like this. So if you want a game that's a low-stress adventure made to fuel your curiosity, I can't recommend Tall Trails enough. Next up is Eden Genesis, a fast-paced cyberpunk platformer from the developers of the Eterna series. You play as Leah, a cyborg whose own cybernetics are killing her, and in order to stop it, she's tasked with going into a virtual world to destroy the corruption by taking on a series of virtual trials. It's a simple setup that gives a good in-universe explanation for the game's structure. It's not really a sprawling adventure, but instead it's focused on taking on demanding platforming challenges and building the whole world around that. Think of it as a 2D speedrun game built from the ground up for fluid movement and beating time trials. But don't expect too many unlockable powers that will make the challenges much easier, because it relies solely on your own skill. It's built around trial and error that forces you to get familiar with the moveset in order to improve on stages and earn higher ranks to unlock more challenges. From the start, the game gives you a deep moveset of wall runs and air dashes for you to master to complete objectives and speed through stages. And the real thrill becomes mastering the flow, chaining moves together to shave milliseconds off your times. And the whole thing is wrapped in a hand-drawn cyberpunk aesthetic that is always clear and readable, even when you're blasting through at high speed. And it's all backed by this awesome soundtrack that flips between moody vibes and electronic beats that really get you in the zone. But like a lot of speed and movement focused games before it, Eden Genesis falls into the pitfall of combat. Mixed in with the platforming speed trials are combat challenges, and they really feel like they can just bring the whole game to a screeching halt. The combat demands to be executed quickly, but it feels like the combat mechanics here are just not really up to the task, and it ends up feeling jarringly out of place in a game focused on high-speed movement. All that said, Eden Genesis is not for everybody, and it doesn't really try to be. It's a game made for a specific type of player who wants to improve on their PB or chase scores. So if you want a tough challenge with an awesome movement system, make sure you check out Eden Genesis.
Temporal crossover complete. Light drones inbound.
I'm a sucker for stories that require you to do the legwork. Think of stuff like Sam Barlow's games, Her Story or Immortality. And in Eternal Threads, it seems to be built on a similar idea. All the narrative pieces are laid out, and it's your job to find the connections. But instead of a simple interface, you're actually boots on the ground in a 3D space. And you're using sci-fi tech to watch and alter the final days of a group of roommates. Your goal is to save them all from a deadly house fire by altering their timeline. But it's not going to be as easy as stopping the fire. You need to manipulate their choices in the week prior so that everyone is able to survive. It's like a detective game where the crime scene is the timeline itself. And you're not just an observer, you have agency in changing the way things go. The game's structure is completely non-linear, giving you total freedom to watch things unfold in any order. You can choose to focus on a specific character's entire arc, or just follow the entire storyline from start to finish at any time. The game trusts you to approach its mystery however you see fit. The house is your hub, and as you wander its burnt-out halls, you watch ghostly replays of the past. You'll watch arguments erupt and secret chats play out, each fleshing out the complex interpersonal relationships. And each of these points on the timeline provide insight to what you might need to change to get everyone out alive. Maybe you'll need to change things so someone needs to be honest, or maybe you'll have to have them try to keep a secret. And by doing so, you'll learn that the correct choice for survival isn't always the most ethical one. All the small changes send butterfly effect style consequences down the timeline, creating entirely new results. It creates a contrast by having you walk through a dead husk of a home, but still surrounded by the messy drama of the past. And you're not stopping some colossal threat. You're helping simple, everyday people navigate their lives and relationships to give them a second chance. The thing that makes this game so unique is also what makes it hard to recommend to everybody though. In essence, it's a walking simulator where you walk into a room, watch a scene play out, and make an occasional choice. It can be a pretty slow pace, and for some people it will feel pretty repetitive, and maybe even a little bit tedious. But if you're into the idea of a game that demands observation and patience, you really shouldn't be scared off. So if you love untangling complex webs of interpersonal drama, make sure you look into Eternal Threads. Then there's the Knightling, another open-air game that takes heavy inspiration from Breath of the Wild. But in this one, you play as a Knightling, an understudy to the world's established knights. And the adventure starts with you alongside your mentor, Sir Lionstone, but it takes a turn when you both stumble upon a discovery of a mysterious threat. And true to his noble nature, Sir Lionstone chases after the enemy and vanishes, leaving you with nothing but his shield. So it's now up to you to master the use of it and step out of your mentor's shadow and become the hero that's needed. Where most games relegate the shield to a defensive option, here it's the focus of everything you do. It serves as your primary method of attack, a key item for solving dungeons, and most importantly, your way to traverse a dense open environment. While you can surf on your shield, not unlike in Breath of the Wild, the Knightling commits to the idea even more. Here it isn't just a neat trick that damages your equipment. It's the core traversal mechanic with no downside of using it constantly. At any time on any slope, you can leap onto your shield and carve through the landscapes that have been built to be your sandbox. The feeling that you get from flowing from a high-speed slide into a paraglide-style drift is really a highlight and always feels great. The developers clearly focused on making the exploration itself the reward, and that makes sure that even long cross-map treks are satisfying and never really a chore. And that feeling is boosted by the world itself, which dresses its modern design with some nostalgic choices. While the broad strokes of this game are very modern, at its heart it is rooted in the GameCube era. The result is best described as Breath of the Wild's exploration, but with the vibrant, cartoony aesthetic pumped up to another level, closer to like The Wind Waker. And the world's personality is helped with its offbeat NPCs with their charming Banjo-Kazooie style voices. And echoing The Wind Waker even more directly is your shield actually ends up revealing itself as a conscious companion, which is heavily inspired by the King of Red Lions. But for all of its strengths and movement, the game's combat can be pretty clunky. And I think that stems from the lack of a proper lock-on system, which turns fights with multiple enemies in them into chaotic messes. That said though, the combat is still functional enough to get by, but it just feels unpolished compared to the game's other systems. So when you weigh the exploration against the combat, it might not be for the most nitpicky of players. But the Knightling is great for anyone looking for a smaller scope open air adventure that nails the big picture stuff while still stumbling in a few areas.
I need to check on Marie.
She'll be fine. You don't need to check on her every 5 minutes. Come on, it's starting.
Next up is Dahlia View, a slow burn thriller that's basically a video game take on Rear Window. You play as a retired wheelchair-bound PI who's maybe a little bit too comfortable being a nosy neighbor. The plot is that a little girl from your community goes missing, and you decide to overreach a little bit and start trying to solve the case yourself. And you end up doing that by watching and talking to your neighbors who each have their own stories that can help or distract from your investigation. The gameplay has 3 distinct modes: watching, investigating, and connecting the clues. Watching is just that, peering out your window with your camera, where the day's events are unfolding and you're trying to catch different stuff and gain info on your quaint little community. Then when you investigate, you actually wheel yourself down and snoop around your neighbors' homes, searching for clues and talking to people that you encounter. And then after that, you take all of the evidence that you've gathered back to the clue board, and in classic style, piece it all together with red yarn to figure out any of your leads. And then you rinse-repeat the whole cycle over again. And it's a cycle that works well, and it's really bolstered by great presentation and performances. The voice acting and facial animation here is really great. It's not going to give you that creepy looking performance capture of L.A. Noire, because all of the characters here have nice stylized looks that keep things out of the uncanny valley. But that's not to say that there's nothing creepy about it, because you do play as an overzealous voyeur after all. That said, it does a good job of getting you into the headspace of your character. In his mind, he feels like he's doing the right thing, but when you consider what he's actually doing, you start to realize that he's maybe a little bit too comfortable crossing the lines of privacy. And he often makes baffling choices that you're forced to go along with, but I think that's a bold choice. You're not Sherlock Holmes here. You're an obsessive weirdo. But if that sounds interesting to you, Dahlia View could be a game that you've been missing out on. Then we have a free game that I think everyone should add to their library. Croak Cafe is what happens when you mix cooking games like Overcooked with Suika Game, and then make it a roguelike. You serve your amphibian customers by dropping different ingredients into a well, and when 2 like items touch, they become a new ingredient or a food item. So you're frantically trying to follow recipes to fulfill your customers' orders on a timer. It's a mix of different types of games, and it ends up working really well. And I think that's because the systems that it lifts from the other games really mesh without it becoming an overly complicated thing to follow. But it's still tricky because of the physics-based nature of it. You have to think about how things are gonna stack and settle. Between rounds, it has the typical roguelike pick 1 of 3 system where you get to pick perks so you can handle the increasing pressure. There's even boss battles where you'll need to whittle down their health by creating dishes. All that said, if you're familiar with these types of puzzle games, it shouldn't take you too long to have a successful run, but if you've never played a Suika clone, it does a good job of naturally having you improve with every run. The art is also cute, going for a simple, endearing style while hitting the legally required cozy game frog quota. For the price tag of completely free, I think that you really can't expect a much better game than this. The dev even is still actively supporting it and updating it with new mechanics. So Croak Cafe is a chill game that really deserves all the attention that it can get. As regular viewers of this channel probably know by now, I love a good Metroidvania game. And Everdeep Aurora is one that I've been looking forward to ever since I first saw it. I mean, look at it. It's going for a really distinct look that really makes it pop when put in a lineup against all of the other tons of Metroidvania games out there. As for the game itself, it's a combat-free Metroidvania about a cat descending her way into an underground network to find her mother. It's a premise that really screams Made in Abyss, but it has a much lighter tone. But like in Made in Abyss, you aren't alone here. You'll be meeting charming characters who flesh things out and drop clues to where your mother could be. It also does a clever thing by shifting color palettes when you enter new areas to set different tones. Gameplay-wise, it has a lot in common with the digging of the SteamWorld Dig games. Your main way of interacting with this world is your drill, that you use to create paths that are unique to your own adventure. As you explore, you get classic Metroidvania-style upgrades like wall jumps, or even better drill bits that you use to break harder rocks. All that said, it won't be holding your hand though. There's no quest log, and if you're not really paying attention, it's pretty easy to lose track of where to go next. So if you want to play a new, amazing-looking Metroidvania where you're expected to let your curiosity be your guide, you need to give Everdeep Aurora a shot. And finally is Bakeru, a spiritual successor to the Mystical Ninja Goemon series from Goodfeel, who are known for developing games for Nintendo like Princess Peach Showtime and Kirby's Epic Yarn. But the reason they decided to do a Goemon homage is because Goodfeel was founded by some of the team from Konami that worked on the original games. But in Bakeru, a massive festival is taking over Japan, and it's your job to stop it. You play as the titular Bakeru, who's a tanuki who can transform into a human being and smash enemies with taiko drumsticks. But that's not the only transformation that you can do. By beating bosses, you get new transformations based on different Japanese folklore heroes, each with their own unique abilities. But at its core, it's centered on standard A to B style levels. But in classic Goemon style, it finds ways to catch you off guard, with a bunch of out of left field sequences. One minute you're thwacking your way through a stage, and the next you're piloting a giant robot or racing to a finish line. It's constantly changing gears, which keeps the energy high and the journey feeling really fresh. But during the standard combat stages, it keeps things a lot more straightforward. You mash through enemies with basic combos, and it just feels really good. Think of it along the lines of a good entry-level character action game. But another thing that makes this stand out is its sense of place. The entire game is like a trip through Japan, each stage being a fun video game interpretation of different prefectures. It even has collectibles that are facts about local history and culture. But if you're looking for a challenge, this game probably isn't the choice. It's a breezy little adventure that's fun to not really stress out about. And as one of the best family-friendly action games released in years, Bakeru is top tier. Just do yourself a favor and avoid the less than stellar Switch version and play it on PC. Alright, and that's a wrap on my latest video on underrated games on Steam. I actually think that a lot of the games I covered in this video are some of the best that I've ever covered, and I think a lot of that is due to having a little bit of a budget now thanks to my patrons. And if you want to help support the channel, the link to patreon.com/C.A.Brown will be in the description down below. Also, if you like this video, do all the YouTubey stuff, subscribe, comment, share it around. All that stuff really does mean a lot. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'll be back next time with some more cool underrated stuff.